I'm going to be showing you the vertical method of adding and subtracting linear expressions, and you're going to add this to your notes from yesterday. This vertical method is especially easy to use when there's nothing to do with the distributive property, like there's nothing here and there's not a number there either. So what you do is you take your first set of parentheses, x minus 2, and you just write it here. And it looks more like the traditional adding where you stack them. So I'm going to put plus, that's this, and then I'm going to put 3x plus 8. Here's what you need to know, and make sure you write this down. Stack like terms. So notice how I put the x's on top of each other, and I put the constants, that's the ones with no variable, on top of each other. And you need to make sure, if you happen to have to change the order, to take any plus or minus signs with you. So if this was a negative 3, or if it said minus 3x, I'd have to put that as a negative 3x here. And then you draw a line down below like you would in regular adding, and then you're going to go ahead and add them just up and down. The coefficient here, that invisible coefficient, is that invisible 1, so that's 1x plus 3x is 4x. And I'm going to add the other 2. I have negative 2 plus a positive 8. Those have different signs, so we subtract and we get plus 6. And one has a variable, one does not, so that's as simplified as we can get. If you notice, we got the same thing as we did yesterday with the horizontal method. On this next one, if you have distributive property, you always have to do that first, and it's going to look the same here as it does for when you have the horizontal method. We're going to use the box method for distributive property. So it's going to start out the same as it did yesterday. So I'm going to put w minus 6 plus 1/4, and then w plus 12. Okay, so I have 1/2 times w, that's 1/2 w. 1/2 times 6, so half of 6 is 3, and a negative times a positive is negative. And then I'm going to treat this as a positive 1/4. So positive 1/4 times w is 1/4 w. And a positive 1/4 times a positive 12. So that's 12 times 1/4. 1/4 of 12 is 3. That's the same as 3 divided by 4. Now I'm just going to rewrite all of this without my parentheses. So that's 1/2, or without the box, sorry. 1/2 w minus 3 plus 1/4 w plus 3. Okay, now I'm just going to stack them, except I'm going to do it over here where there's more space. So I have 1/2 w minus 3, stack the like terms. So I'm going to put the w part below it, and then my plus sign right here. So I have 1/2 w plus 1/4 w. If I was to make common denominators, that's 2/4. So 2/4 plus 1/4 is 3/4 w. And I have a negative 3 plus a positive 3, that is 0, which we write as just 3/4 w. Okay, now I'm going to show you that same method, but with subtraction. Again, when there's no distributive property, it's a little easier. When there is distributive property, it gets a little tricky. So I'm just going to put 7y plus 5 minus, okay, oh, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I didn't stack them. Let's see if I can erase that. Minus negative y plus 6. Now again, I have that invisible coefficient right here of 1. Okay, so now I'm just going to do this as normal. 7y minus a negative 1y. And then I have a positive 5 minus a positive 6. Okay, so here's where you're going to have to do adding the opposite. You're going to have to do ATO. So you're pretty much just distributing a negative 1 inside. So I'm going to change this to adding. I'm going to change this to the opposite. And then I have to also do the opposite of this, because you're distributing that negative to everything inside the parentheses. So now it's 7y plus positive 1y is 8y. F5 plus a negative 6, that's going to be negative 1. So 8y minus 1. And I have one more example here. So I have 5x plus 6. There's nothing really to distribute there, but I have to do the distributive property here. Now, if you treat this, so let's put that treat as negative 2, then it kind of makes the distributive property a little more simple here for later. So that stays the same. I have negative 2 times a 4x. Well, that's negative 8x. I'm distributing that negative to inside. You're basically just changing the sign of everything there. So negative times a negative will be a positive 4. Okay, I've already distributed that negative 2, so that allows me to just add them because I've already changed the sign of everything inside here. I'll go back and show you what I mean. So 5x plus negative 8x, different signs subtract. So I'm going to get negative 3x. And I have 6 plus a positive 4. That's 10. Now, you don't have to write this part down, but let me show you something. So I have 5x plus 6. Let's say I don't treat that as a negative. I just treat that as a 2. Well, that's 4x minus 2. So 4 times 2x is 8x. 2 times the negative 2 is negative 4. So because I just treated that as a positive 2, I'd have to keep this in the parentheses, and look what happens. If I subtract there, if I put a subtraction sign, well, I'm going to have to do ATO now because it's subtraction. So I'm going to change this to adding. I'm going to take the opposite of what's inside and the opposite of what's inside. Now I ended up with what I had over here. So it's just easier if you put this as treat it as a negative 2, and then you could put a plus sign here because you've already basically done ATO by doing that. And that is the vertical method. Make sure you've added that into your notes.